I was laughing. I wondered who wrote that description. There will be some of that in the talk, a lot of it actually. So, first thing, there's a bunch of stuff about me. Nobody cares about that. So, I'm going to start telling a little story first about my career and what I was doing in 2018. But I did a little research about what was happening in 2018, and there's a bunch of stuff that happened that I didn't even remember about. So I didn't know that 5G just was announced and was deployed in 2018. I should have known that because of what I was doing in 2018. GDPR, for everyone here that was, EU adjacent or in the EU, was just announced and rolled out. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Even in 2018, Tesla was having problems with Elon Musk. He was thinking about taking the company private. He was not thinking about doing it. The cult of personality was still going strong. 3D printing, you just could start actually printing metal on 3D printers. So the company I was working for was doing a lot of material science work with how do we make airplanes lighter, how do we do those types of things. Microsoft had just bought GitHub. There was raging cryptocurrency issues with FTX and Tether, the stable coin, which would come back to bite me later on. I don't know how many people were crypto curious. And then I also bought my first Oculus Rift in 2018. But something was also happening in the software engineering world. DevOps was kind of maturing. The Phoenix project by Gene Kim had just come out, by Gene Kim, Kevin Burr, and George. That had just come out, and it popularized and kind of matured these four different things that we're going to sort of touch on and then talk about platform engineering. One, DevOps really became an engineering practice. Right? People were talking about DevOps, automation. I know that Jez had wrote, I think around 2008, 2010, had wrote Continuous Delivery with Dave. But this really codified DevOps as a real software engineering practice. They popularized the 3 ways of DevOps. They really focused on silos being broken. I got a quick peek at Gregor's talk as I was coming in, and that idea of harmonization throughout the entire value stream was something that was really starting to be advanced as a part of the Phoenix project. And then also something that we do a lot at ThoughtWorks that we might over-index on at ThoughtWorks is around lean software development and value stream management and value stream mapping. That was something that also came out of that book. So really about visualizing flow, identifying friction, those things were things that came out of the book. Why is that? Yeah, okay, good. Why is that important? In 2018, I was working for, I think I mentioned it on the panel, I worked previously before ThoughtWorks, I worked for a defense contractor out in the US. And what we were working on at the time was we had a bunch of different drone platforms. So we had all these drones that would go and do stuff and do all of these different things. And my job was a newly minted DevOps manager for the entire drone platform. And what we had when I got there, I flew from Washington, D.C. to San Diego, and what we had was binders and binders and binders of install manuals. This was SSH onto this terminal machine, install these 8 packages, make sure that your rail network connectivity is back to your Red Hat satellite service so you can download these packages, all of these different things. So you had hundreds of pages of instructions. We had to log into terminals and do those things. We had 14 days, a 14-day window to actually have the plane and drone come on the ground and then install all of the packages. Just a show of hands, how many people think that we always made that 14-day window? Perfect. We never made the 14-day window. Never. We were constantly keeping these drones on the ground for 30, 50, 60 days. So in my flight over there, I said, you know what? I've been doing some other work. There's this, CI/CD pipeline stuff that we can do. There's these tools, Ansible and Puppet, that we can do. What if we automated the code deployment and build, test, secured, and deployed for each individual single pipeline that we had? So we started working with the teams and listening to them. We started bringing in things like Gradle and Bazel because we had some weird languages that nobody really uses anymore. And then we started using Ansible for runbooks. There was a tool that Ansible Tower, and then they had like an open source version of it. We were cheap, and we didn't want to pay for the licensed version, so we used this open source version. But these were the kind of starting points for the DevOps movement on that plane, on that platform. I'm going to do one more guessing game here. So we started off at around 30 days. At the end of that, it took me about a year and a half to kind of build all those DevOps pipelines that were there. Less than 10 days, how many people think that we made it to less than 10 days on that? What about less than 5? Okay, so we were able to eventually get a plane down on the ground and complete new software loaded on there in less than 24 hours. And so that was the kind of seminal achievement. But what it did introduce was this idea here. It wasn't just one drone, it wasn't just one platform, it was a ton of drones and a ton of platforms that we had to support. And so ultimately we ended up with this sprawl of CI/CD pipelines. We were using Jenkins at the time. We had, I think at one point we had over 900 self-hosted runners and individual pipelines for deploying those things, for deploying the software onto the drones. And what we ultimately wanted to try and do was to consolidate all of those things and give more power to the developers to actually experiment and get new capabilities onto the drone and to get all of these things there. So we started focusing on a couple of things because I was was not working at ThoughtWorks at the time, was a huge Martin Fowler fan. Love Martin, he's great. He's yelling at me because I should have this article already written for this and on his site. But Evan Bottcher, who was working at ThoughtWorks in Australia, wrote this article and in 2018 and said, hey, there's this thing that is about platform engineering. And there are a couple of concepts and pillars that all of these companies that he's been working with and ThoughtWorks was working with in general were starting to explore. And this is kind of like the seminal definition that I remember reading. And it was really 4 things that stood out. 1, this idea of a compelling internal product. 2 was the idea that it was going to create autonomous delivery teams that weren't going to be coupled to different things. They weren't going to have to put in an ITSM ticket and really have click ops or ticket ops as their main driver to deliver software. They're going to be more autonomous. They're going to be able to deliver product features at a higher pace. So there's an outcome that's associated with that. And there was going to be reduced coordination, right? So it's all of the things that we were talking about in the Gene Kim book, but a little bit more advanced. And so what we've been focusing on ThoughtWorks since then and up until now is the idea of, well, how do you do that? Like, what are the things that are there that builds that ecosystem for folks? So it's for developers. So it's partly just the pure platform engineering practice. I won't belabor that because we've got the platform garage, we've got the platform therapy session. There's a ton of material here on platform engineering, but the core outcome there simplistically is around helping teams deliver faster. The next is around architecture remediation and APIs. There's very few people that are doing pure greenfield development. So there's a ton of legacy systems that are there. And even if you're doing greenfield development, if you work for a startup or something like that, the danger in the room is through M&A. I've worked with a ton of companies where they have this pristine platform that they love and they cherish, and a merger happens or an acquisition happens, and now I have 1,000 more developers that have to get on board onto the platform, and they have their own platform. So it's this idea of not only doing architecture remediation and being API first, but also how do you fold those things in? Self-service, not only for the APIs, but also for data, experimental infrastructure and telemetry. So how do I, and we'll talk about this. If I have a platform and I have a bunch of developers that are doing stuff, how do I get their great capabilities and experiments that they're doing into the platform, right? How do I promote those capabilities there? And then customer touchpoint technology. So from 2018, I've been at ThoughtWorks around that time and been very close to the platform engineering space up until now. What I've noticed are 4 key things that have changed, and we're going to walk through all of these things, and then we're going to talk about my favorite topic last. what I've noticed is that self-service has completely evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve. And you all are probably going to be tired of everyone coming up and talking about platform product thinking or product thinking for platforms, but it's something that has really moved the needle. And again, like I said in the panel earlier, it's one, for me, of the key indicators of whether or not I'm going to have a very difficult time with my client talking to them about platform engineering, or is it just going to be a moderately difficult time? So if they're doing some product platform thinking, it's going to just be moderately difficult. If they're not, I'm going to have a very difficult time, and I'm going to have to fly to Australia all the time for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, or Singapore or wherever. The other one is around platform operating models. I think we had a very simplistic view of that coming from out of the DevOps organization model, and I'll talk about that. And then the other one is the technology stack, the volatility around it. So let's talk about self-service really quickly. I don't know why that did that, but that's okay. It's because I don't know how to use PowerPoint. So how many people have seen this type of a model where I've got a ticket that I have to fill out to do anything? Okay, okay, more people. Okay, great. I was very confused. I was like, oh, is it just me that's done Jira ITSM tickets, and where's my ServiceNow users? So they're big, and I don't hate them as much as I normally do. Because of this, I think that we do things that we shouldn't do. So self-service should really be about requesting IT services and resources, onboarding developers, and provisioning infrastructure. We should not be using self-service for reporting incidents, logging customer feedback, and managing non-IT customer requests. Those are things that are actually fit for purpose for ITSM ticketing systems and Jira and those things. So if we have a number of people in the room, if we're focusing in on using Jira for, hey, I've got to provision a new GitHub repository, I've got to put in an ITSM ticket, that's another indicator for me that, okay, you're going to need some platform engineering help. Let's start like really moving in a more mature direction from the capability standpoint. And that's easier said than done because that's a cultural problem. But what was happening in 2018 and what's different from now is that the front door for a lot of platform engineering organizations were the ITSM systems. And now what we're doing is changing what the single pane of glass looks like. So it's not about ticket submission, and it's not about just putting in requests to get resources. It's really about these three things. It's about discoverability and visibility. So what IT resources do I have available to me? There should be an API to query for those. How can I do self-service templating? How can I build in some of the guardrails that Gregor was talking about earlier into my actual product capabilities and platform capabilities? I do that through that productivity and efficiency mandate. And then I also have that through my governance and standards. So I get this kind of view into all of the different regulatory aspects that I may have, all of the different compliance pieces, and I get those things for free for the most part, as long as the platform engineering team is listening and moving in the right direction. So this is something that is mildly controversial. How many people are using some sort of IDP, like a Backstage or a Port or a Cortex? Oh, more than I thought. Okay. The controversial part is that although this is the first thing that I'm talking about, it should not be the first thing that organizations build. So a lot of people conflate a platform with the IDP, the internal developer portal, to support that, versus thinking about the platform capabilities that I need to give to the developers and then building portal capabilities around that, right? So it's the inverse. So a ton, if not most, of the organizations that I talk to that are 3 years into one of these journeys, and they say, well, we've got this platform, this developer platform, and no one's using it. And I go take a look further, and it's just Backstage. And I'm like, well, Backstage is great. Love those guys. But where's the actual capabilities that you need that you have to have and should be providing to the developers? Well, we've got Backstage. That's all we need. And so that mindset change of going from thinking about the platform as just a portal to an actual set of capabilities and capabilities that the teams are going to use is extremely important, because that's the second change that I've been seeing since 2018 is the increased focus, not only by folks like me, but actual practitioners and actual teams on having product thinking for platforms. And we had a quick panel yesterday in the afternoon that I was late for because I came here instead of going there. But I asked a question, or maybe I didn't ask it, but I'll ask it here in the room. Of people that are on platform engineering teams, how many of those teams have a product owner or technical project manager that is actually talking to developers? Okay, next year, if I'm here, I need that to be everybody. So everyone go and advocate for getting a TPM or a product manager on your teams. The reason why is because in 2018, what we were seeing were project-led platform approaches. So this idea that we're going to organize the platform through a series of projects, and that's what we're going to give to teams. That's what we're going to give to developers. So it's, hey, everybody's writing Java code. Here's the Java initialize internal portal that we built so that you can click on these things and get this Spring Boot project up. Great. What do I do after that? Well, then we've got Jenkins, and you can self-service all of your pipelines and manage them yourselves. Well, I don't have time to write code. How would I have enough time to write and manage Jenkins files and the build infrastructure for that? Oh, no, that's okay, because we've also given you a library of Terraform Git repositories, and you can go click on those and download those and then stitch all of it together and then deploy into production. Well, how do I test? Don't worry, we've got Gherkin files and Cucumber files and Robot Framework files that can start you down the path of that. And those things are fair, but those are projects that are there sitting on top of cloud infrastructure. And so at the time, coming out of the kind of DevOps movement, that made sense. But now what we're seeing more and more of, and I realized that this was a lot more and a lot smaller than I expected it to be, but I'll guide us through this. What we're seeing now more and more is product-based capabilities based on jobs to be done that developers have to do. And we're talking about stitching that job to be done across the entire value stream. And that's the starting point of the product thinking. So instead of, I've got a Java project, I'm going to help you initialize that, separate. I have to test, I have to do all those things. It's a collective capability. I have to deploy something into Java. I have to deploy a Java application to production. Great, I'll give you all of the stuff that you need to do that in one package. And I'm going to treat that package as the product capability. The one thing that I've noticed more and more, well, I won't say that. The one thing that I've been advocating more and more for is actually having SLOs and SLAs as a part of those product capabilities. Right? And that seems kind of weird, but if you think about it, if I have a set of SLOs and SLAs for here's your template for getting a set of requirements or user stories in a Java application or Golang application or Python application into production. And my SLO is that if you use my platform capability, I can get you into the production environment in 10 days. Right? I can get you some working code into production in 10 days. Versus if you do this on your own, there's no SLO, there's no guarantee. But if you do that, I can get you into 10 days. Most organizations, most developers, most product teams that are actually working on business-facing code would say, yeah, I'll sign up for that. I'll sign up for that. And even if you miss by 12 or 14 days, that's better than what they were doing before, and you can refine that. So having actual SLOs that are meaningful to the business attached to whatever those product capabilities are is important. And I loved Gregor's slide before, in the presentation before, where he talked about the domain and the technology. That intersection is what the product capability is. We have to get something done. There's technical capabilities that we need to get that done. What's the product that we're going to put into the platform? It's the intersection of those two things. And it's all of the other things that are there: observability, security, patch management, which I'm on a tirade about. But it's all those things. So then You organize your platform team about that, around those product capabilities. You've got those things figured out, and you're asking, well, how do I actually give that out to the developers? And I'm going to actually go in the reverse to talk about this. So this is a little story. So I'm working with a customer. I mentioned them before, an airline out in, we don't need to know where they're at. So they've got product capabilities already set up. They've got all of these things. And what they were noticing was, hey, all of our product teams say that we're moving so slow and they want to do so much that they want to introduce their own little mini platforms to support their development. And I said, oh, my intuition says that that's a dangerous idea. I've worked at really big companies before, and that turns into shadow IT, where they have their own stuff and they're not using the platform. But I said, what if we gave them kind of like a little experimentation area where they can experiment with that, they can mature it, and then we can figure out a way to pull that back into the platform. So their big thing was, and this will be no shock, they said, well, we want to introduce, one of the platform teams said, we want to introduce Gradle as our build tool because they're using Ant and it feels really slow and we don't like it. So I said, yeah, let's let them do the work. We'll give them some developers from the platform team to go and take a look and see what they're doing. And if it's something that's meaningful and other teams need it, we'll help extract that back out of that product team and then make it a platform capability. And that took a lot of coordination. That took having a very strong and very capable technical product manager to be able to scan those product teams and say, this team is using Gradle. That feels like other things, that feels like something that other teams would use. Let's let them experiment with that. Let's extract it back out because we've asked the question, do teams outside of that team need it? If they do, then we say, hey, we're going to take that, you can continue to use it. We're going to take that product capability, and then we're going to mature it and make it fit for purpose for everyone else. We're going to harden it. We're going to make sure it's secure. We're going to put in the SLOs and SLAs. Whatever that contract between the platform team and the product team is, we're going to make sure that that's adhered to, and then we're going to scale it out to all of the other teams so that they now have the use of Gradle. And that took about 3 months of additional capacity, but the thing that happened was that normally was that was actually on their product backlog, and they had said that was going to take 8 months. So because a team already kind of experimented with something, it shortened the time that the platform team had to mature it, but also it decoupled a bit the product team from being able to experiment and do stuff independently on the platform, but a little bit of independence, and that made them be able to interact with each other in a very, very interesting way. So that kind of capability maturity is something that I've noticed change between 2018 and now. The other one is around the operating model. So I'm going to skip this slide because I'm just going to be talking about projects versus products, and I just talked about it a little bit. This is an interesting. So, how many people in the room have an enterprise architecture organization? Okay, it's mostly. There's some pretty large enterprises in the room. Then, okay, excellent. How many of them dictate architectural and governance standards to the developers? Okay, most of them. So this is out of a very, it might be not very old, oldish book around enterprise architecture, strategy, and operating models. And it's this idea that a lot of times we try and have the platform team dictate the operating model to the business. And what should happen is the reverse of that. And so many times I go into clients and I talk to them about, they say, Rickey, the platform team is not really operating as efficiently as we think they should be. What should we do? And I say, what's the business trying to do? What's the outcome that the business is trying to get to? Are they trying to coordinate across a bunch of different individual business units like a Home Depot, right? Where they have multiple large business units doing different things like supply chain and inventory management and in-store POS processing and in-store experience, and they're trying to coordinate all of those? Or are they trying to have one unified business direction like Delta? They're only doing airline stuff. They're not doing airline stuff. Well, that's fuzzy. They've got all of this stuff that they're doing with American Express. But their core business is flying planes. Or are they trying to replicate a single business model multiple times, like Marriott hotels, right? So they're trying to provide this platform to do that. The reason why these things are important is because it actually dictates the direction that the platform team should be doing and gives you a guide to determine how much autonomy teams should have versus how much non-autonomy they should have. I forgot what that word is. But standardization. And Gregor's, the subtitle of the book for platform strategy is something that I talk to organizations quite a bit, is innovation through harmonization. Because most people think that the platform is going to provide this box that they work in, and the opposite of that is true. The platform provides you with the pavement and the guardrails that you would have so that you can drive as fast as possible. And then, so a lot of people ask, okay, what does that look like? And I mentioned this in the panel before around treating the platform like it's an internal SaaS product. And I said something during the panel, and I saw both Cornelia and Nikki kind of smile, which is this idea of if you're Salesforce, you have something called customer sales teams. That when I go and make a sale of Salesforce, I get all of these people that come up and say, hey, we're not only going to try and upsell you on a bunch of other stuff, but we're going to make sure that you're successful because we want to have stickiness with the users. So that same thing should be something that if you're treating the platform as an internal product, then you should have that. So you should have a core platform team, and you should have people that go and talk to the developers, the Stream-aligned teams. That is something, these developer success teams is something that I'm starting to talk to my clients more and more about. And I'm going to go really quickly here. There was a whole thing about mergers and acquisitions. That was a special case that I wanted to talk about because I know that there's a ton of companies that are doing mergers and acquisitions. One of the banks that I'm talking to down in Australia is doing a platform reconsolidation. And I wanted to let everyone know in the room that it's okay to run multiple platforms for a period of time. Even though everyone will tell you, no, you've got to get to one platform, it's okay. Even 3 or 5 years, as long as you're taking smaller chunks of the capabilities off of one of the platforms and migrating it to the other and onboarding those users, the journey will be really long. Just stay patient. You'll be able to do that piece. The tech landscape is changing and wide. The only reason I wanted to talk about this was because in 2018, there were only about 40 CNCF projects, and now there's over like 250 of them. And so it's about being discerning. It's about experimenting with the platform and onboarding individual technologies as deliberately as possible and based on the developer need. And then really quickly, 2 more minutes, and then I'll be done. Actually, less than that. It's just me asking for some feedback from you all. There's my special topic that I love talking about. The proverbial elephant in the room. And this was generated with Gemini, so just so you know. I don't think just in case you couldn't tell. So at ThoughtWorks, one of the things that I'm working on, and we are really rapidly moving towards because our customers are asking about this, is how do I integrate AI into the platform? How do I rebuild the platform so that it's AI focused? And this is a model that I've been working on for a bit of time. And it's something that is not anything that'll be out for use for folks. But I am going to be putting some LinkedIn messages out about this and asking for feedback. The biggest thing is the transformation of the experience layer. This idea that if you have product capabilities, what is going to now be the change agent for that? It was code before, and if it now turns into prompts as the change agent for new changes, what does that do to the experience layer? How do you democratize software in a meaningful way through conversational interfaces, through visual workflow designers, and then what does your DevX integrations look like to support that? And there's a bunch of other stuff in here that's actually pretty important, but this thing is flashing at me with zeros, just like boom, boom, boom. So Again, like I mentioned, I'll be putting out material about this on LinkedIn. It's the thing that I'm working on kind of next, in addition to all of the great platform engineering stuff, and would love to get feedback on what people are experiencing in the kind of agentic developer portal space, agentic platform space, and then other topics as well. I'll probably be at the booth for the rest of the day. All right, I think I'm good, right, man? Yeah.